Hey everybody, how's it going? So I want to do a short video today on a topic I've touched on in the past, which is not accepting the premise of assholes, and something that I've done wrong when advocating for right to repair. When certain points would come up, I would try to address the point rather than the premise. So one of the points would be that if uncertified technicians, or if you allow just anybody to fix things, that there are safety implications, people could hurt themselves, you never know what's going to happen, safety, 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 don't you care about safety, don't you want it to be done properly so that it's safe? And one of the things that I used to do is I used to address the point rather than the premise. I would accept the premise of an asshole by addressing the point. So the point that I would bring up is, okay, in the past 13 or 14 years, there's been an independent repair business for these types of consumer electronics that's been growing and growing and growing and been over a $4 billion business in this country. How many articles, in the clickbaity state of journalism we have now, how many articles can you find where consumers were harmed? Genuinely harmed, like, ow, there was a piece of glass that like cut them and it cut their artery and they died, or the battery blew up in their face and now their head exploded as a result of independent repair not doing their job. I'm not saying that people have always done perfect repairs. I'm saying how many articles in a $4 billion industry can you find? I would show up at state legislatures and I would take a phone and I would open it, and Jessa would change the charge port, and Jessa would show a video of her kids that are toddlers changing the charge port and being able to do it fine. I would show a motherboard I fixed in the wire. Sometimes I would show, here's what happens if let's say I put it to the wrong place. See? There's a teeny little spark, it stops working, and that's that. No explosion or anything like that when I'm fixing a phone or a MacBook. And even in the cases where I have had a battery explode on me for a phone or a laptop, these are not Tesla batteries. These are phone batteries. It does a little dramatic thing on your desk, and then it goes out in a minute or two, and you're done. Like, I remember I have a video on my channel from 6 years ago from the security camera, from when a technician was using a tool that was a bit worn in the end and screwed up because I did something to it that I shouldn't have, and he tried to get the battery out and it smoked in front of him. He backed away, he opened the window, and then he came back a minute later and it was out. No big deal. The thing is, I would always try to address that, and I would try to prove that the point that they were incorrect in their point. But what I was doing there was, even though I was disproving their point and showing that they have no citation of this when they're saying their safety concerns, in spite of it being a $4 billion industry, it was that I was legitimizing the premise, which is that the burden of proof is on us to be able to exercise our right to be able to repair our personal property. You need to be able to maintain your personal property, or you don't actually own it. If this thing can die 13 months in and you spend 4 or 5 or 7 or 8 figures on it, and you can't fix it unless you go to the dealer and pay 75% the cost of a new one, you don't really own that. Somebody else, you're leasing it. In order to exercise your property rights, you have to prove that it's not 50 or 60 or 70% safe. You need to prove that it's 100% safe. And I don't actually have to have any citations where I can showcase that you have done an unsafe repair. I can just throw it out there in the ether, and now the burden of proof is not on them, but it's on you to be able to exercise your right. That's a bullshit premise. That's a horrible premise, and we should be attacking the premise, not trying to argue the point that what we do is safe. And even when somebody does something that's screwed up, like the consequences are not this lethal, dire, horrible thing. We should be arguing the premise, because the premise is what's bullshit. If we talk about a car, we would never accept the idea that an automaker can come up with brake pads that only fit their car. This car can only take this brake pad, and they did something to it so that no other brake pads will work, and they told the manufacturer of the brake pad, don't sell it to anybody but the dealer. We'd never accept that. A car is an item that can do 0 to 60 in 2 to 12 seconds, that weighs 2 to 6,000 pounds, and you are absolutely allowed, with no experience whatsoever, to go down to AutoZone or someplace like that, buy the pads, put them in your car, and then drive that car down the road at 60 or 80 or 90 miles an hour if that's the speed limit in your area. And nobody would try to tell you otherwise. No one would say that that you just can't do that anymore because of safety. We don't have that conversation. And that's way more lethal than talking about putting a charging chip into a cell phone. That is way more lethal. We have 16 or 32,000 deaths in the United States every year from car accidents, and there may be some of them in there that were because of poor maintenance. Who knows? Even when we're talking about cars, where you do have 16 to 32,000 people dying a year, no one would bring this up, because that happened during a time. Cars came into being and became popular during a time when, in my opinion, in the U.S., our culture valued freedom a little bit more than safety. I'm not saying we should go back to the 30s and the 40s and 50s. I'm not saying we should go back to not having seatbelts. I'm not saying we should go back to the times where you had people building the Empire State Building and you could see that they're on beams in the sky, just lying over like this, right about to fall off to their death. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that I think we've gone a little too far in the other direction. And you'll hear, people joke every now and then. I've heard people who are older than me talk about how people these days, they are helicopter parents to their kids, whereas in my day I was able to, ride my bike and we play stickball in the street and, maybe box in the roof of the building in the summer, and then I'd come home at the end of the day. My parents weren't trying to figure out exactly where I was every second of the day. And good luck having kids do free play unsupervised now. It's a different world that we live in, and I think that this culture of valuing safety over freedom is something that has gone over into repair. So in certain ways, it's kind of grandfathered in. With cars, it's like a grandfathered in unlimited data plan. You can't do anything about it because people have that expectation. But when it comes to newer and newer and newer technology, these things that we would never allow to fly 50, 60, or even 30 years ago, we're positing these arguments now. You don't hear anybody saying you shouldn't be able, we can't let people buy brake pads to our car. We need to lock up the system and tell the brake pad manufacturer not to sell to anybody but us. And we need to make this car only work with this set of brake pads that we approve, because if we don't do that, then, what if there's a safety issue? That argument could be made, and it would be a way better argument to make with cars than with cell phones and laptops and cameras, where there's just, again, the citations, if you were to look it up, of people dying, losing an eyeball, having their head blow up, have a piece of glass from a poorly done screen repair, while they're fixing it, get in their finger or get in their wrist, and then they bleed out in the repair shop. This is not something that happens. And even when you do have cases that have occurred, I have a video on this channel where someone was doing a battery replacement, and the tool was a little bent because I screwed it up the day before. The battery went out, it smoked in the desk. It let a little bit of dramatic smoke in the air. He opened the window, turned on the fan, comes back 2 minutes later, and it's out. It's no big deal, and it was sitting on a wooden desk. Now, these are not, you're not going to find these cases of people, dying left and right as a result of this band of independent repairmen. Yet for some reason, we feel the need to defend ourselves when the safety argument is brought up. And I would just challenge the premise. The premise is that we need to prove that what we're doing is 100% safe in order to have freedom. That's garbage. We don't accept it with automobiles. We don't accept it in any other area of life. Hell, let's just say cooking. You could buy something at the store. You could buy meat. You could not cook it properly because you don't know how to cook. And then you didn't cook it, and now you have salmonella, now you're sick. Maybe you wind up getting something else, and you die. All sorts of terrible things can happen when you have freedom. So what? That doesn't mean we get rid of freedom altogether. We can work on how we structure our society so that people who do unsafe things have consequences. And we do that at this very moment. There's a Department of Consumer Affairs in New York City. And if I do bad things to my customers and my customers report me to the Department of Consumer Affairs, they show up, they remove my license, Marshall shows up and changes the lock on my door if I keep doing business, and I'm not able to do work for other people. If I screw up and I do bad work for other people, I get shut down. A system already exists for that. This expectation that freedom shouldn't exist unless we can prove that what we're doing is 100% safe all the time, when you don't even have a citation of an unsafe thing that has been done, that's ridiculous. And for us to even respond to it is legitimizing the premise. I'm not saying that we shouldn't argue at all, because to not engage in the argument and to not have the back and forth means they win. What I'm saying is that we need to focus on the premise, not the point. This is also something that you'll see happen with security. They'll say if they have access to a schematic, the security of our device will be in question. iPhone 7s and iPhone 8s have had schematics available. They were leaked a while ago. Have people been hacking into the phones, using the information in the schematic and, hacking into your text messages and all that stuff? No, they haven't been using the schematic to do that. Have people been able to hack into your 2011 MacBook Pro because an 820-2936 schematic exists for the board? No, it hasn't. When you hear security brought up, you'll always hear it brought up as a potential problem, but you will never hear a single citation of how someone used a schematic, a board view, or the ability to purchase a charging chip to be able to hack into a customer's device. You will never hear, ever, a specific citation of how this would happen. And because when we're arguing these bills, I speak 90 seconds, you speak 90 seconds, and then we go home, which is why I want to do a direct ballot initiative to get around that pathetic system to begin with. I don't get to go back up there and say, okay, so they said that there's a security implication. If they are willing to cite even a single case of it, I'm more than happy to work in a workaround into the bill so that that never happens. So what are your security implications? Oh, you don't have any. Oh, you don't even have a single case. Yeah, we shouldn't be accepting the premise of assholes. We shouldn't be trying to argue with their point, which is you have to prove to us that it's safe. Okay, here's how we prove it's safe. No, we're talking about freedom. And when we talk about freedom, that means that I have the freedom to fix something that I own. I shouldn't have to prove that I'm fully qualified to fix something that I own. I have the right to cook my dinner screwed up. I have the right to fix my car. Maybe I screw it up. I have the right to work on my device, and I have the right to destroy that device. I don't have the right to tell the manufacturer that they should have to pay or cover it under warranty after I screw it up. Magnuson Moss says that they are allowed to decline me warranty if they can prove that I screwed it up. But the whole concept that your freedom to do something is dependent or directly linked to your ability to prove that it's 100% safe, that's just not something we do. If we did that, we wouldn't sell nails and hammers at Home Depot. We wouldn't be able to buy brake pads for our car. We wouldn't be able to buy food at the grocery store. We would have someone else doing everything for us, and that would be that. But that's not the world that we live in. And I sincerely hope that that's not the world that we're headed to. But it is if we allow these types of arguments to take way. Because you see how with each passing year, we move towards that recurring revenue bundle, or as Scott Galloway mentions, the rundle. You see how with each passing year, it is more difficult to work on the devices we own, fix the devices we own, utilize the software that we utilize unless you're paying for a subscription. We are moving towards a model where we don't own anything. And in spite of what certain people may say or believe, we're not going to be happy with it. That's it for today. As always, hope you learned something. See you all in the next video.